Well, I think it's real individual, and it depends on, again,
Yeah.
what my buyer wants.
Yeah.
And I am here to be their advocate, and I will do what it takes to get what they want
Yeah.
regardless. And I think one of the biggest things is communication. You need to do sales. It's just the way my persuasion is with people, my tenacity. I've been called a bulldog so many
I'm
times.
glad you said it because I didn't want to say it, but
And so many times I'm like, is that even a good, is that a good thing? I think it just comes down to certain people are really good at certain things.
Yeah.
And I was told that through my previous brokerage.
Yeah.
It was just a real natural thing for me.
yeah.
I was told that when I graduated college and got hired through my first company. You're a natural salesperson.
Well, here we are again, once again, at the Rate of Success podcast. I am really excited today. I am joined by a realtor I've been working with for quite some time, Anna Fattore. Anna is a realtor at App Properties, and she has built an amazing business. And why don't you tell them a little bit about how long you've been in the business, Anna, and where you're at currently?
So I'm still with App Properties out of Naperville, and a little over 10 years.
Okay. And then you were at John Green for a period of time and then recently came over to App Properties?
Yes, I was at John Green Realtor,
Okay.
located in Naperville as well.
Yeah.
That's where I started.
Yeah.
And then made my transition 2 years ago.
Okay. So what has that transition been like now that you're at App Properties? You've been in the business for a period of time. You were at some place for a really long time. So I'm sure it was a little bit of an adjustment. What has that transition been like coming to App Properties?
I love App Properties.
Yeah.
I love App Properties.
Yeah.
I mean, and really, it has to do with many factors. I think it has to do with the technology that they give us, the tools that they give us, the way we market properties, all those things. I love it.
Yeah. And you were happy at John Green, obviously.
Very.
Yeah. And this business changes, and there's all these things that go on in the business, and the market changes, and we had COVID, and we have all these things, and we're kind of in our business.
Right.
Was there a part of you that were kind of like, I just needed to change and I needed to try something else? Or was it truly just all of the tools that became available to you that maybe, drew you to the App Properties? Because everyone I know at App Properties is so happy. And I think it's important to kind of know and understand what that provided you making that change. Because I went through a change in my, career.
Sure.
And it's, it's overwhelming at times. And you did it during a very busy time and you made it look very easy. So did it feel easy from the out, being on the inside?
It was actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
I think the main difference was I was at more of a local boutique shop versus a larger brokerage.
Yeah.
And I think the main reason that I really wanted a larger brokerage, more brand recognition, is I grew up in Chicago.
Yeah.
I grew up in the northwest suburbs. I still have friends and family out there. So I work a huge area and have knowledge of a huge area. So that brand was great for me because not everybody knew my old brand. It was very local.
Yeah, and when you're in the city, App Properties they own Chicago. Now that they've gotten into the suburbs, obviously now everybody knows App Properties. They own
DuPage, they own the northwest suburbs, they own the North Shore, luxury, just about everything.
Yeah. You've been in the business 10 years. How did you get into the business? Because we always say none of us get into the real estate industry. It's not like we go to school. I always joke around, like you don't sit down with a guidance counselor and they say, oh, you want to become a realtor. Like we all kind of end up here like by accident.
Right.
So what was kind of the path of getting into the business and what drew you to the business?
So when I first graduated from college, I was in media sales.
Okay.
And I was kind of had a degree in media, but ended up getting steered into sales.
Okay.
I love people. I was a people person. I communicate very well. That was my first job. Why I started in real estate, after that, I spent about 10 years doing that. And then I did a big lifestyle change and I decided to stay home and be with my children.
Yeah.
We lived in Naperville for 35 years.
Yeah.
And, sold bought and sold homes. And I think my first inclination of wanting to do real estate was dealing with real estate agents and realizing all the faults.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing this? And I know it looks a lot easier,
Yeah.
but now that I know more, I always felt like I could do this and I could be good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because like working with you, we've done a lot of business together. I've always appreciated the way that you ran your business. And I will say this, like out of everyone that I work with, your ability to get offers accepted and negotiate contracts is like a 12 out of 10. I don't know. Like, it's funny because a lot of times realtors will ask me to get involved or like reach out to the listing agent. You just kind of, I don't know what you do when you hang up the phone with me, but you always call me back and you're like, okay, we're good. The contract's accepted. And this was during COVID. So I don't know if you're like, I don't know what happens after that, but can you just talk a little bit? Because I think you're very modest about it at times, but you have this knack for how you communicate with other realtors. Like you fight for your clients, but to a point you're very professional and you want to get it done. But where did that come from? That drive and that, because, I don't want to say not every realtor is like that, but you have a very high success rate. So where did that drive come from and where do you get that? Like, what's the secret?
Well, I think with multiple offers,
Yeah, or just anything. Like you're really good at negotiations. Like you're always putting your client first. I've never heard you say to me like, anything about your compensation or anything like that. You're always focused on how can I get this done for my client? Like that's where you're at. So where did that drive come from and what's the secret to kind of where you're so focused on that? Is that just who you are?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's personal goals and it's a competition with myself.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with what my client wants.
Yeah.
I was taught this a long time ago. And, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
you're going to get compensated. So money it still isn't a factor to me. And I really enjoy what I do.
So that's kind of where I was going with this. And I'm glad you said that. That's kind of what I was getting at is like, there are certain people that are motivated by that financial piece. And then there are certain people that are motivated by the outcome. And the money always comes with the outcome.
Right.
Okay. And you've always been very motivated by the outcome. And it shows because that's why you're so successful, because you don't get caught up in a lot of the stuff that's easy to get drawn into. So just from a multiple offer standpoint, are you more where you approach the agent and just, like how do you find that success? Is it building rapport with the agent or what's that secret that you always have? Because again, your success rate is higher than anyone I know. When we were during COVID, there were some times we were at 10, 20 offers and you always did such a great job of getting those offers accepted. And I don't even know if the clients understand. I would always tell them, separately, like, I don't know if you realize like what Anna just pulled off, but it was amazing. So I just give you a lot of credit. And without giving away your secret, what are some things that you do that you think are really, really important to make that happen?
Well, I think it's real individual and it depends on, again, what my buyer wants.
Yeah.
And I am here to be their advocate and I will do what it takes to get what they want, regardless. And I think one of the biggest things is communication.
Yeah.
And I see this all the time with agents on the listing side. They just submit offers.
Yeah.
They don't even call me on the phone. And, that feedback is going back to my seller.
Yeah.
On whether or not I feel good, with this particular person that I'm working with, or are they just spitting something up on the wall to see what will happen?
Yeah. How much is your listing process, changed over the years, the more you've kind of been in these competitive markets? Have you changed how you bring in offers, how you accept offers, how you present them? Or is it all pretty much the same with, kind of creating that relationship with the other realtor, hopefully, and kind of making sure? And then how much of it is preparing the client as well and being transparent and everything? Is it a little bit of everything just to kind of make sure everybody is, meaning explaining to the client, these are the offers. This is what I feel like. I know this realtor. I think this is good. Like, is it going through all of that and kind of, yes, yeah.
So you get to know people.
Yeah.
And people know when you're reputable. People know when you're honest. People know that, you're here to get a job done. And in the end, the seller and the buyer, The seller wants to sell, the buyer wants to purchase. We're here to make this happen.
Yeah.
So, I draw in from that listing agent to get it. Some cases, they're not real verbal with me.
Yeah.
But in most cases, I want to draw out of that listing agent what they are looking for, what their seller needs to accomplish their goals. And then we meet where we need to be.
And I think everyone assumes it's always just about price. And it's
Not
not
always.
just about price. I mean, price is important, obviously. Everyone wants to get, but it's also about the relationship, how to get it closed, the team that you're working with.
Right.
And you do a very good job of kind of managing all of that. Even, when I've seen, an issue, you're very solution-based. You don't, I always say this, I've been saying this a lot, talking with realtors lately, is like, some people are they react. And you're always going directly to the solution. Whenever a problem comes up, you're always thinking like, okay, well, how do we solve this? Or what do we need to do to solve this? I don't even know if you realize how much you do that, but it's very different because sometimes people get so caught up in the drama of the event that they never get to the solution. And you're always like right to the solution. Like our conversations are always, okay, this is the offer. This is what we need to do. Can you get me this letter? Like you're just, going down the list. And then that's why I think you're so successful is that you have that motivation. So before you got into this business and sales, have you always been, because I think there's a level of competitiveness that you have or drive.
Yes.
Like, so where did that, where do you think, did you play sports when you were younger? Where did that competitiveness come from?
I just think, it's just like people that have a natural ability to, enjoy and do math well. I'm a people person. I don't know where the competitive. I always, and I don't really compete with others. I like to work with others.
Yeah.
But it's a drive inside of me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
I don't
because
really
I think
know where
even
it
if
came
people
from.
have it or they don't, and I think that drive is what people hire you for. That's your brand, and that's what helps you win in a market. I think it's admirable because I think that's what makes you so successful at what you do because you want to win. And when you win, your clients win.
Right.
So that's really important.
Who doesn't want to win?
Exactly. Now, you said you had raised a family and, so full disclosure, Anna somehow made her son come work with me during COVID. She made some, either it was punishment to get into the mortgage business or, but she trusted and it was obviously stressful for me because I'm, working with your son. And it was awesome. We loved having Nick here, and he was a pleasure to work with. Question for you. So you were competitive. Now, I have a son that's in soccer. I know your kids played soccer.
Nick did.
Nick did. Okay, so were you that competitive when he played soccer, being a soccer mom?
You should probably ask my kids. Watching their games.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just wondering if it carries over to that. But yeah, here we are. We've exited, obviously a very crazy time in COVID.
Right.
Okay, so you've kind of been in the business 10 years. So you've seen the build up to COVID. We went through COVID. We all thought we were amazing. Things were great.
Crazy times.
Phone was ringing. It was great. Okay. And it was hard to build a business because we were just in survival mode at that point.
Right.
We were just answering the phone, order takers, as I always say. Then the market changes. Rates start to go up. Okay. Conversations start to get a little bit different. Okay. And what I call it is separation season. You have some realtors that are exiting the business or maybe not doing it as much, where I feel like you separated yourself from the pretenders and the people that are real professionals in this industry. And I feel like you really separated yourself over the last couple of years during that time, okay? How has your conversations changed going on a listing presentation during COVID until now? Is it mostly talking about the market? How much is you preparing them for what is different now? Because a lot of people, if you're not in this industry, they think everything is still very similar to where it was a couple of years ago. So what does that conversation look like?
Well, quite honestly, it comes down to giving them truthful facts and information so they can make educated decisions. Mm-hmm. I'm here to help them. In the end, it's their decision. The market has been, was volatile back then, crazy back then, but within the last year, due to inventory issues and things like that, has been very volatile and continues to be. going into 2025.
Yeah.
I think each individual person is different and story is different. My goals are different based on what that person needs and wants.
Yeah. Do you have people that are considering selling, but they're just afraid of what it looks like from a buy side and they just don't want to list, or they kind of just they want to sell, but they just don't know what the next step is going to be and how that's going to look. So maybe they put it off for a period of time. Do you have clients that you talk to that
Sure.
just can't get over that? So what do you think is the catalyst that would get them over that hump? Because I feel like that's where we are in the market. We have a lot of pent up seller demand. Average tenure in homes is up to like 12 years, whereas
Right.
forever we're at 4 to 7 years.
Right.
Okay. Now, a lot of that is interest rates.
Yeah.
People are in low rates. They don't want to sell. But then you also have people that, well, what am I going to buy? There's no inventory. I can't, afford to sell and buy. So you have this market where people are just, what does that look like? And what do you think that catalyst is that would get people? Is it more inventory?
I think more inventory would help.
Yeah.
I think the adjustment in rates when a person purchased for 2.5%,
Yeah.
And they're going to upgrade.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a concept that's hard for them to
Yeah. They're going, so just that increase in
conceptualize
rate. Yeah. Yeah.
Not only are they increasing in price, but in rate.
Yeah.
I think we're going to continue to go through that because of the rate increases, and hopefully we'll see.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the magic
Decreases.
question is where rates can go from here, how far they can go down, and does it solve the issue? That's the question, because what I always say is, and what I'm concerned about is everybody that needs to sell also needs to buy. Okay? So it doesn't necessarily bring more inventory per se, because if someone has to sell, they need to buy, they're taking up inventory as well. So just because hopefully it can start moving things a little bit.
I think it depends because, I have sellers that are leaving market or it's a family home.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that we're seeing a lot is, there's going to be reasons for people to sell that have nothing to do with interest rate or price. If you have a
Right.
life event for one
Life
of the family
events.
members.
Yep.
And they need, and that's the challenge is most of the baby boomers are, aging in place, as they say.
Yep.
They're living in their house way longer than they did before. Retirement communities are really expensive for families. So all of a sudden they have a life event that happens, and then they all of a sudden need to sell. And then it becomes, well, now what's the next step? And so you have that. So a lot of people are aging in place. So I guess, what does that look like on a listing side when you're having that conversation? Because you're dealing with so many emotions a lot of times right now. And I think the best realtors know how to handle a kitchen table conversation. And did your previous sales experience, or is it just something that you have always been very comfortable with in those conversations? Because I feel like you are very calm in those situations.
I'm calm, but I'm directed. And in the end, it's up to my client. I don't sell.
Yeah.
It's about meeting what their goals are and how are we going to get there.
Not telling them what they want to hear, but really just advising them on what their options are. This is the market. This is the way it is.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it sounds so basic, but again, I think that comes with confidence when you're at a kitchen table. There's not very many sales. Even in my business, a lot of what we do is over the phone. There's not very many sales nowadays that are face-to-face. A realtor is one of those ones that are still very face-to-face.
Sure.
And
All relationship.
especially at someone's kitchen table, because they're at home, they feel more comfortable. They're inviting you in their home, and now you're giving them information that it's not always what they want to hear.
That's particularly true when I'm working with family, when I'm working with friends, when I'm working with friends of friends.
Yeah.
All those types of things. I mean, I always tell them there's a line here between our friendship and what I have to do for you.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I've been in the business over 20 years, and there's always this, people either love working with friends and family or they hate it.
Sure.
And you always work with friends and family, and I never hear you complain about it at all or anything. Like, you truly enjoy and you take pride in it. Was that hard for you to kind of separate that? Because I think it's always hard because there's emotions involved.
I mean, I think it can be hard for certain relationships.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, again, the communication of laying out how this is going to work.
Yeah.
And my role and
Yeah.
what I'm going to do and, my job and what I have to do to get this done. And my job, first and foremost, is to protect you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to achieve your goals and close the deal.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to do everything I have to do, keeping you in mind. It's not me, it's you.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed is you have always had, the same attorney.
I use the same. Yeah, I do have go-to attorneys.
Yep. Yeah. You have like a group of people that you work with.
Right.
Okay. You demand a lot out of the people who work with you, which is good. I like that, and that's why people hire you, is because they know that you're going to you get nothing out of referring these people. I always like to say that because I don't know if people always understand that, but you do it because you know that you've vetted them. You've worked with them, and you know they're going to provide the best possible experience to the people that you work with.
Absolutely. And again, for buyers or my sellers, for that matter, it has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
It's just what I've seen with transactions. And while I transact, the type of service I get. And that's what I want my clients to have.
Was there anything that you learned early on in the business that, 5 years in, 6 years in, that you wish you would have learned a lot sooner? That was kind of a tough lesson to learn. And for me, I'll give you my answer, let you think about it a little bit. But, I was always I wanted to be the hero all the time. And I was always the people pleaser, because I wanted people to be happy.
Right.
And, which I still want to be that way. But sometimes, to your point, you got to give them, the hard, news, and you got to give bad news quickly. And I was always trying to fix it behind the scenes because I didn't want to make anyone worry about it. And I always got it done, but I had so much weight on me that I couldn't provide, it just was very heavy. So was there anything that you learned early on in the business that, or even later on, that you feel God, I wish I would have picked this up earlier?
I think the biggest thing is the box.
Yeah.
So many realtors stay in the box. Well, this comparable and this comparable and this comparable means that this house is, when we're dealing in a market right now where you have such little inventory and not a lot of comparables, and I hope I'm answering this question the right way, is, stepping outside that box.
No, I think it's great. I think it's a great lesson. And I think being able to adapt, I think is kind of, the market's changing so often, and stepping outside that box or adapting to the market and learning the market quickly is a tool that we need to all kind of figure out.
Right.
Because the way we did something 6 months ago is not the way we do it today.
And I have conversations with other agents about this all the time.
Yeah.
Because I do a lot of benchmark pricing.
Yeah.
And we get to the closing table, and you know what? It's because other agents were afraid to try.
Well, and let me touch on this a little bit, because we were discussing this a little bit before we started, but, I have never, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've had very few issues on appraisals over the years. And
I don't think we've had any.
I know. I attest that mostly to you. And I'll tell you this, why. Because there's some things that you do that I don't know if you realize how unique it is. But when you place an offer, you're always discussing with me, okay, this was the last sale that happened. I think this will be this. You've already done all the work up front.
Right.
You're communicating that to the other agent, okay?
And to my client.
And to your client.
So we understand that you're not overpaying for a property.
Exactly.
Right.
And you're going through all that. You have all the data. You've done, I can tell when we're talking, you're not just going in to win the offer.
Right.
And I think, and I hope I'm not giving out your secret, but I think that's why a lot of people like working with you, is because they know you've done your homework. They know that when you're making an offer, it's not, this is why we're making the offer and we're going to do it at this price, or, hey, we're not going that high because these are the homes that have sold and there's no way this is going to appraise out. And this is why. You always have done such a good job of laying that out. And that helps me, because then when we do the appraisal, we have all the data. The listing agent is, probably giving that same data to the appraiser. And then that's what allows us to have the success, because we're not just throwing something up against a wall.
Right. And my job is not to throw something up against the wall and see what happens. My job is to make sure that my client is getting value for the home that they're purchasing,
Yeah.
and they're purchasing, even in a multiple offer, at a fair value.
Yeah.
Not to overpay. And in cases where my client has to have that property,
Yeah.
and we're in multiple offers, I will go as far as to explain to them, now in a normal market,
Yeah.
you know, this is where I'm seeing the value. 5 to 7 years before you're going to make some money, clear all your expenses on the list side. This might, instead of that, I'll say, you are
Yeah.
purchasing, you might have to stay there 8 years to get the value out. But if you really want it, I just want you to know,
Yeah.
this is where we're at.
And that's a good conversation to have, because I don't think most people have that conversation. And if they
It's
choose
all
to move,
honesty.
but that's what creates repeat business. That's another thing I've noticed, is a lot of your clients always come back to you.
They do.
And
And they refer me.
And you know the
So-
stat of like 70% of people don't use the same realtor twice, and every single one of our clients that I know always come back to you. Always. So you're doing something that I think you just do because it's your business, but it's creating this loyalty and relationships that are so important. Because right now, you know, I've seen over the years where pre-COVID, you had everyone doing Zillow and all these other things, and that was kind of what everyone did. And then I feel like, you know, COVID happened and we were swamped. And then I feel like everyone's going back more towards relationship-driven business, because so much is changing on every type of lead type, and then you have to redo stuff, where I feel like you've always been very relationship-driven.
Yep.
You know, and it's very organic. Like you're not giving out free stuff to your clients and you're not doing all this free stuff where people, you know, are getting stuff and that's why they're loyal to you. They're loyal to you because you're really good at what you do and you provide really good service, but more importantly, really good results. When you got into the business and you were going through this, was this just the natural path that you just don't know any different? Or is it something that you actually think about when you're working with a client?
I think it just comes down to certain people are really good at certain things.
Yeah.
And I was told that through my previous brokerage.
Yeah.
It was just a real natural thing for me.
Yeah.
I was told that when I graduated college and got hired through my first company. You're a natural salesperson. You need to do sales.
Yeah.
It's just the way my persuasion is with people, my tenacity. I've been called a bulldog so many times.
I'm glad you said it, because I didn't want to say it, but
and so many times I'm like, is that even a good? Is that a good thing? I mean,
no, it is. It is, because I sometimes I say, sometimes I joke around. I'm like, you know, Anna's a firecracker, because you just like, you get shit done. Like if I needed something done, like you would be the person that I called, because but that's a compliment. Like we need more.
Well, I do it until I have to. I do it until I get what I want.
Yeah. But the difference is you're doing it not for the compensation. You're doing it to get your client. And that's why people come back to you.
And I find so much satisfaction out of making people happy. I really enjoy and I love my business.
Yeah.
I do it full time. I'm up, on the market. I have such great tools, such great advice from my colleagues that it is really fun to me.
I love how you hold me accountable too. Not that I wouldn't deliver the service I do, but even the relationship that we have and as many deals as we've worked together, you still hold my feet to the fire, like when we're in a deal or when you need something, and that just goes to show who you are and what you're about, because you're trying to get from point A to point B and all the pieces are in the middle. Like you're pulling everything together to get it as quickly and as efficiently as possible.
Right.
And that is a very important piece of the puzzle that I think a lot of people miss. And it's something I really respect about your business. So I just wanted to mention that. So we talked a little bit about this. I want to get into it. We had a difference of opinion. So let's go through inventory a little bit. So what is the conversation when you go on a listing about pricing look like today versus even 6 months ago? When you go on a listing presentation, how different is that conversation?
Sure. So I think, time factor has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Whether or not, we're going to sell homes in March. We're going to sell them. I wrote a contract and got a home sold on Christmas Eve last year.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter when, but what I'm seeing is a shift a little bit in the marketplace. And I'm seeing a more balanced market where 6 months ago, I was seeing basically, sellers asking whatever they wanted and buyers
Yeah.
going along with it.
Yeah.
I see a little bit different. I see more balance. I see, people optimistic that rates will be coming down, so they're not as worried about purchasing. But the buyers are savvy and they're not so quick to react all the time,
Do you
too.
think that's the opportunity then for the buyer then compared to where we've been 6 months ago?
I do.
Yeah. I mean, this is the conversation I've been having, that I've been saying the next 30, 60, 90 days could be some of the best opportunities for a buyer before rates go down.
Exactly.
Because once rates go down, I think you're going to lose some of that leverage that you have right now. Because I think if you're a seller, and I would say this is every fall. I don't know if it even has to do with where we are. I feel like there's these opportunities where people need to sell, for whatever reason, because I feel like spring is generally the time where we see the most listings, and it's all about, well, you have more buyers. People that need to sell now, there's usually a different reason for selling.
I feel that there's been a lot of sellers on the sideline waiting
Yep.
for the right time.
And now, do you think that they're waiting and they're starting to get, oh my God, I waited too long and I need to hurry up and sell?
Or they're at a point where it's like, I'm ready to sell.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that a lot.
Okay. Because I always say that there's a lot of pent up seller demand.
Yep.
Where you have a lot of sellers who put it off and they were hoping rates would go down and they haven't. So now all of a sudden, like, we just can't wait any longer and we have to. And, the stat that I always give too is like, a lot of people that bought during COVID, remember how crazy that time was?
Right.
There's like a stat out there, like 60 or 70% of those people were not happy with the purchase that they made. It's a crazy stat. So they would have done it differently if they did it again, but because rates were so low and they were rushing out and they were bidding
Right.
on, you just got whatever you could, and so a lot of those people would love to sell and buy again, or maybe they bought a 3-bedroom and need a 4-bedroom. They've had kids, they were in a townhouse, maybe they want a single family, but they're locked in because of the rate that they have.
True. But listen, a seller always thinks that they could have gotten more for their home.
Of course, yeah.
And a buyer always thinks that
Yeah.
they paid too much.
Yeah.
And there's a certain level of buyer remorse
Yeah.
to a certain degree. That's where the research and the honesty and,
Yeah.
I'm here for you. I'm doing this for you, not for me, for you, comes in.
So we talked a little bit about inventory. You feel like inventory is increasing a little bit and you feel the market shifting a little bit.
I feel like it's going to increase and we're going to have more listings.
Okay, so that's good. If you're a buyer, entering the market, more listings is good. Where do you see 2025? Where's going to be the advantage for 2025? Is anybody going to have the upper hand, buyers, sellers, or is it going to be very market and location specific? Because I think a lot of buyers are waiting. Yeah.
Well, and I think it depends where you live.
Yeah.
That's a big factor.
Yeah.
Depending where you live.
Yeah.
Are you in Illinois? Where
Let's just
are
say
you?
Illinois. Let's say our, Naperville, our DuPage County. Where do you feel like the opportunity is going to be from a buyer or seller? Is it going to just be more balanced, where nobody really has the upper hand? It's just going to be more balanced.
I feel like it's going to be more balanced.
Okay.
I think, the buyers that have been waiting because they don't want to pay the interest rates that they're seeing right
Yeah.
now. Hopefully they'll get incentive coming forward.
Yeah.
I feel that sellers that have been waiting because they don't want to sell quite yet, or they're watching, are going to come forward and say,
And I think
It's
a
time to
balanced
sell.
market could actually help out, even if rates don't go down as much as we were expecting. Because I think the tough thing that a lot of buyers had is, you mean I have to pay this rate and I got to pay over list price and I got to waive all my contingencies? Like, there was nothing leaning towards a buyer that made him feel good about that purchase.
buyer's remorse.
Exactly. And I think if you can take out some of those variables, you can say, oh, I got it 1% under list price and I was able to do a home inspection and get some repair. Like, I think they could swallow the interest rate a little bit easier if they didn't have these other variables. Because the one thing that, I don't know if you saw this, but the 2024 home buyer and sellers report from NAR just came out.
Yeah.
The average first-time home buyer age was like 38 years old. It's crazy. Like, to
Yep.
think about, that went from like 31 to 33, 37. Now it's 38. Like, there's so many buyers that are not purchasing because of affordability, because of inventory, because of rates, consumer debt, all these things. So there's
Sure.
so much pent-up buyer demand. as well. So do you feel like those people would have the opportunity to re-enter the market if rates were to come down a little bit?
I think so. I think they're waiting for rates to come down.
Yeah.
And I think if we do continue to see more inventory,
Yeah.
that's where the market's going to.
Yeah.
I see a more balanced market than I did in 2024.
What does the conversation with a buyer look like today when you're talking to a buyer and the concerns that they have? Is it changed at all over the last couple of years, or is it all still around rate, price, or, how do you get them? I know you lay out the different options and let them know kind of what to expect moving forward, but has that conversation changed at all?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, each buyer is different and each individual need is different.
Yeah.
And the reason why they're purchasing is different.
Do you feel like if, I feel my experience has been recently is I feel like the longer they wait to purchase, the more they're accruing debt. Okay. Meaning
I tell young people that all the time.
it's that's the scary part for me is I don't feel like it's necessarily I think the market is an issue and all the factors that are obvious. I think the other major issue is financial literacy. It's something I talk about all the time in education. And, I see a lot of student loan debt. But I also see a lot of credit card debt, average car payments, $800, all these things. So, you have inflation. I have a lot of young people, you hear over and over again how great the economy is, but they feel like they're not experiencing that, because maybe they don't have the retirement savings that, older people have, and they haven't bought in a home. But the interesting thing is I have a lot of 20 to 25-year-olds that are buying homes, and not accruing that debt because they're getting their first job. They're buying a multi-unit or a duplex and they're, homeownership. So I think that gap is really around financial literacy. And I think as an industry for us, like the opportunity is to try to find a way to kind of bridge that gap, because I think there's a lot of people that should be buying that don't, just because they're carrying way too much debt.
Either that or they're just unsettled with where they're going to be.
Yeah.
But I always tell first-time buyers, including my own children,
Yeah.
that you are better off purchasing than renting. Get out of the renting game as soon as you can, even if it's, it's not your perfect home or what you want, but in the end, it's going to be better for you.
Yeah, no,
to own versus rent.
It's interesting because I think that's going to be something that we're going to see a lot of in the future, is a big focus and push on education. Because if we remember, there's no focus on in schools anymore about, investments and savings. And you remember we used to have classes on that when we were in high school.
Yep.
And they don't do any of that.
Account.
Exactly. Like they don't do any of that now, but yet we just, kind of have kids that get into, financial hardships because they don't know better. And there's just a big gap in financial literacy. So I think it's a huge opportunity for us, because I think it'll get homeownership age to come down, because 38 is, it's old. It's
Sure.
way too old. It should be early 30s, where it's been for years. And over the last 5 years, it's gotten a lot more. So I wanted to ask you about that. So the other thing I wanted to ask you just briefly is NAR settlement. I remember when I was reaching out to people on NAR and, compensation changes, and there were, I remember your conversation. I don't know if you remember it, but you basically were kind of like, again, very solution based. You just didn't care. Like I'll just tell it for what it is. You didn't care. I asked you about, like, I would call people and they would, complain for 15 minutes. And, I always love getting your opinion on stuff, because you're just there's no filter. It's like directly to the point. And
well, I mean, we all have to adjust.
Yeah.
Everybody adjusts to change.
Yeah.
Regardless. Now, I'm not a drama person.
Yeah.
It's like, ask my kids. I'm not one of those, looking to filter more drama.
Yeah.
The fact is, the NAR changed the rules. We have to transact differently now.
Yeah.
The bottom line is, if you explain what took place and what is in effect now, and you explain the logic behind it, it's really I don't have any negative feedback.
So I'm gonna answer it a little bit for you. Why I think it's not a big deal for you.
Why?
It goes back to our initial conversation. Is you're not focused on the compensation, and if you're focused on compensation, this was a much harder conversation to have with a buyer.
Maybe.
Because you didn't have anything else to offer them. In essence, you were already offering the client your service level, and how you do business is really what people are hiring you for. Okay, and the compensation piece is just something that, you're not focused on. And that made it easier for you to transition to this. And this is what I go back to, kind of separation season. This is what separates the real players in the industry from people who struggle with those conversations at a kitchen table, and being able to know what your worth is and to be able to have a conversation. But when you're not focused on compensation,
right?
I think that's why it was, when I asked you that question, you're like, oh, it's just a change. We'll deal with it and, move on. Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is now, always and always will be, commission is negotiable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whether or not certain agents are explaining that correctly and certain ones aren't, it's always negotiable. Now we have to have it separated.
Yeah.
I have to be compensated just like we all work. We have to be compensated. I'm going to do my best to create a transaction where the seller is paying that compensation.
And I will say, just in my little sliver, and I've asked this to numerous loan officers, out of this branch with multiple loan officers, we've had 300-400 transactions come through, and 97% have worked exactly the way they did prior to August 17th. We've had, such little noise around this post August 17th.
Right.
There just hasn't been as much disruption as people expected.
Right. Well, I think it comes down to explaining what it is that we're doing, and particularly sitting down with your, the seller and saying, if I have a seller, and the way we're going to list the property and the way the language in the contract is going to read now versus before, where the broker paid out the commissions, now it's the seller, and we both produce different closing statements. Think about it.
Has there been an opportunity in that conversation up front that it's come out of now discussing it up front? Have you, do you feel like it's been helpful to have that conversation up front? Have you gained anything from that?
Well, I think it's just all logic. Like, first of all, you've got a buyer coming to the table. They're wanting to purchase your property. Now you want them to pay for their buyer's agent as well. I mean, like, they're bringing the money to the table.
Yeah.
They're financing. You want to sell. This has got to be a win.
Yeah.
Now there's always negotiations involved, always. And there always was. But, understand that.
Where I think the interesting thing is, and I've been talking a lot about this, is I've seen in multiple offers where people had the ability to pay for it on their own compensation.
Yeah.
They would say, hey, instead of putting down 10%, we're going to put down 7%, and we're going to pay the buyer agent's compensation out of our down payment. And then they offer, to the sell side or the listing agent, well, now when they're in multiple offers and the seller doesn't have to pay compensation, they've now netted the seller 3% more, and they won the house that way. So there are going to be a lot of instances, if we get back to multiple offers, where we are going to see strategies like that. Now, unfortunately, if you have a minimum down payment, you can't do that. But it was the same amount of money out of pocket for my buyer, okay? But they were in a multiple offer in a specific neighborhood that they've been trying to get in forever, and they were willing to pay the extra $40, $50 a month to get that offer accepted. So before we wrap up, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. So, well, first of all, let me say this. Not only have you built this great business, okay, but you've, obviously raised, probably your biggest accomplishment is raising, 3 beautiful kids, okay?
Absolutely.
So, what has that been like being, obviously helping your kids, raising your kids, starting a career, okay? And, obviously you raised these, perfect kids. I had your son work with me. Wow. You raised, whatever you accomplish in business will, is always going to be more important than raising, kids. And, that's obviously a lot more fulfilling. So what has it been like just, going through that and being there for them and doing everything for them growing up to now having this kind of business? Was there a part of you that was said, you know what, I want to do something for myself and build this business?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
And I also, this is going to sound kind of crazy,
Yeah.
they were like my small little business.
Yeah.
Because there were goals that
Yeah.
we were achieving before
Yeah.
they left the coop.
Yeah.
So that was always kind of
Did you run the household as a tight ship as you do this business?
ask them.
Yeah.
They'll
yeah.
answer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there was just expectations and nothing out of the
and you
ordinary.
do such a great job. You spend a ton of time with your daughter. She's on a cruise ship, traveling around, having fun. And you do a great job of still spending time.
And I talk to Nick about an hour a day, every day.
Exactly. Like you do such a great job of you're busy, but you always make time for your kids.
Right.
And that's
they're
really
the most important is your family. But you know what?
Yeah.
They have to be happy. When I say that there's goals and there was expectations to make you a good person when you grow up and do whatever it is that you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
Kind of the way I run my business is to make that person happy and achieve the goal that you are trying to achieve.
But seeing you run this business and seeing their mom do that also sends a great message to them.
Oh, they love it.
Yeah, because it shows them like, look at this is what mom did and now I can do it. And that's why, they're so motivated and successful. So you've done a great job there. So I just wanted to mention it because it's hard to do both. It's really hard to do both. So lastly, I just want to end with, have a little fun. So if you weren't in real estate, okay, and money was not an object, what would be the dream, career that you would like to do?
So, I was actually meeting with a client the other day, and I have another client right now. I did substitute teach in the school district for 17 years and actually have relationships with teachers and have worked with them on this side now.
Yeah.
And I loved teaching. I just loved it. I love being around kids.
I did not know that about you, but it does kind of make sense because I think the best realtors have what's called the heart of the teacher, and not everyone has that. So you said you enjoy it, but when you're a teacher, you're there to help others.
Yep.
In real estate, you have to have that drive and that heart. And it says a lot about your business because, saying that. So I love that answer. And I didn't know that about you. What grade did you teach?
I was K through 8.
Okay.
I didn't really like to do the high schools, but I love the junior high.
So is there anything that you can relate from teaching to real estate? Is it harder to have a group full of kids or deal with the buyer and seller?
There's so much emotion that goes into a sale.
Yeah.
And I can work with doctors, teachers, lawyers, deans, whoever. And when it comes to selling the house, people can just go like that. And my job, again with the teacher.
Yeah.
Rein them back in. Let's talk logically.
Let's
come up with a solution.
It's all starting to make sense now.
So So I think I probably, if I had to do, if I had to choose a different career, I would have loved to have been a teacher.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Well, I just wanted to say thank you, obviously, for, all the support. And it's, you're one of the easiest realtors to work for because you're so good at what you do. You make my job a lot easier. And I just appreciate everything you've done. But more importantly, I appreciate how great you've been to my staff and my team. That means more to me than anything because, they don't get to go on sales trips. They don't get to, have all the wonderful things that we get to have. So when people are good to my staff, and I will tell you, every single person on my team absolutely adores you. And they always laugh and say, oh, God, we love Anna, So I just want to say thank you for that because it means a lot because I don't get that yet.
You know what? I think so many people in this world forget thank you.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah.
Everybody is valued and we all have to work together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. It means a lot to them. I know it means a lot to me, but it means even more to them because they don't get that every day. So when someone stands out like you do to them, I just want to say thank you for that because that also shows a lot about who you are and your values because it's not like you're just running people over to get something done.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a lot. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Everybody holds a value. Just
Yeah.
different talents.
Well, I appreciate the time to sit down. We'll do it again soon. And I just wanted to say thank you again for all the support. And we're going to get together in 2025 because we're going to have a bet on what's going to happen on home
we'll
prices.
See.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay. We'll see. We have a difference of opinion. We're going to get back once we get a little bit into 2025. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
Okay.